So let's continue on here back to CavDef. Father's involvement. Since the late 90s, there have been suggestions that Johnny's father, Leonard John Gosh, was complicit in his son's kidnapping. No definitive evidence of his involvement has ever surfaced. All the while, Noreen Gosh and others have alleged many instances of suspicious behavior on Leonard's part, and he is known to be deceptive about key facts of the case. One question that has never been answered is why Johnny, on the one day he got abducted, did the paper route by himself instead of being accompanied by his father as usual. As Noreen stated in 1988 and in her 2000 book, Leonard always went with Johnny on Sunday mornings, and Leonard himself said this in the film Who Took Johnny, that, quote, I was with him every Sunday morning except that particular Sunday morning that he was kidnapped, end quote. Going out that morning without Leonard left Johnny far more open to being abducted. Indeed, it is unlikely that an abduction would have succeeded in Leonard's presence. That Johnny broke this pattern for the first time on September 5th, 1982, and happened to be abducted the same day is incredible enough to raise suspicion that him being alone that morning was planned. I'm still kind of reeling from the woman taking his photograph from weeks before. I mean, I can't get over that. I mean, that's so creepy. That's so creepy. And then, yeah, people, when you combine it with the phone calls and all these statements Leonard supposedly made, Noreen goes over them in the book, like last chance to go fishing that summer. I mean, with Johnny, there were certain statements that Leonard had made. Supposedly he was very agitated, and then all those phone calls. Some alleged he was being blackmailed in some capacity. Noreen also said Leonard threatened his own suicide from pressure or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely weird. Let's continue on here. At first glance, since it was up to Johnny to wake his father, not the other way around, this suspicion does not reflect on Leonard. Noreen stated as far back as 1988 that on the night before the kidnapping, Johnny asked to do the route alone, and she and her husband refused. But he disobeyed to deliver papers by himself that morning. But Noreen claimed in her book that when Johnny asked to do the route on his own, Leonard initially said yes before Noreen overruled him. Furthermore, even though Noreen refused his request, Johnny came back downstairs shortly after going to bed to hug his mother again and tell her, "You are the best." Based on that, there are indications that Leonard went behind Noreen's back to ensure that Johnny would go out unaccompanied that next morning. I mean, how would anybody know if Leonard did? Yeah, if he did go to Johnny later and say, yeah, you could actually go by yourself. How would anybody other than them know? This was far from the only irregular occurrence involving Leonard that Noreen alleged in her book. According to her, Leonard began acting very erratically a few months prior to Johnny's abduction, and his behavior only worsened afterwards. While many of her accusations about Leonard have not been corroborated, some of them have, and his inconsistent false statements about the case, see below, illustrate a general lack of credibility on his part. Early in 1982, Leonard allegedly developed a very hateful attitude, which he took out on all of Noreen's kids, but especially her older son, Joe Gosh. In June 82, he purportedly arranged a fishing trip with Joe and Johnny to Lake of the Ozarks because it might be their, quote, last or only opportunity to do so, end quote. And when they got back, Noreen's son told her that Leonard was very evidently depressed. The next month, while Leonard was on a business trip in Raleigh, North Carolina, he allegedly called Noreen threatening to kill himself because he could no longer live with it. And she had to make the Raleigh police do a welfare check. It can be surmised from Noreen's account that something happened in 1982 that put Leonard under a substantial amount of stress. So this is August 82, before the abduction, or even earlier than, no, July. This is July's business trip. Okay, then in August 82, Noreen claims that Leonard took Johnny on a day trip to Omaha, with one of their destinations being Offutt Air Force Base. Johnny was said to have had a foggy memory of the trip. Per Noreen's account, immediately after the Omaha trip, she and Leonard began receiving those hang-up phone calls every Sunday morning, 1 a.m. They continued until the day of Johnny's abduction, when Leonard answered not with wrong number as he usually did, but instead gave the caller a series of affirmative responses. After Johnny was kidnapped, the calls stopped. These calls have only received limited corroboration, but if true, they raise the questions about what Leonard was up to in the weeks just before Johnny's abduction. Oh, I do not like this Omaha trip. Johnny couldn't recall what happened. Then there's also a CIA asset calling Noreen afterwards to try to be involved in the case. So just a few weeks, he's at Air Force Base. Did the woman taking his pictures, was that after their visit to the Air Force Base? What kind of personnel at the Air Force Base might have seen Johnny? I mean, this is kind of weird. This is really weird. After Johnny was kidnapped, Noreen was forced to shoulder most of the responsibility for keeping the case alive, as Leonard was less inclined to go out in the public eye. Behind the scenes, meanwhile, the marriage was in serious turmoil, according to Noreen. Leonard began spending most of his time on purported business trips, not informing Noreen of his plans, whereabouts, or contact information while he was gone. Much of his time away was spent in Lincoln, Nebraska, and Omaha, Nebraska. There's Omaha again. They did still make public appearances together on the case, but some of them turned disastrous. Following an event near Davenport, Iowa, August 17, 1984, they were invited to, Leonard severely beat Noreen, an accusation corroborated by Scott County Sheriff's Deputy Sam Raley. Wow. After Franklin scandal victim Paul Bonacci confessed his involvement in Johnny's abduction, his attorney, John DeCamp, informed the Gosh family, but Noreen has accused Leonard of hiding this information from her. It was acknowledged even back in 1992 that Leonard checked out Bonacci on his own for several months before Noreen found out, and Leonard confirmed in 2018 interviews that he visited Bonacci in prison with John DeCamp and private investigator Roy Stevens, but not his wife. The question is whether Leonard's intent was to inform Noreen about Bonacci eventually, or keep the information hidden from her indefinitely. While the 92 article claims that it was Leonard who ultimately informed her about Bonacci, there are doubts about how accurately it describes Noreen and Leonard's motivations. It claims that Leonard checked out Bonacci during a period of 6 or 7 months from late 1990 to March 91, when Noreen had completely shut down on the case. But there are newspaper quotes of her during that period which contradict that. It is therefore unexplained why Leonard spent a long period of time investigating Bonacci without telling Noreen, especially if he didn't seem that interested in any other aspect of the investigation. Is it because he knew Bonacci had real credible info? Per Noreen's later account in her book, she was actually informed not by her husband, but by Roy Stevens. In 1999 court testimony and her book, Noreen claimed that Leonard, in fact, went to great lengths to hide Bonacci from her, visiting key people from the Franklin investigation with a woman other than Noreen, who he introduced as his wife. Okay, all right. We're kind of going past the point of no return with Leonard here. I mean, this is not looking good. Noreen's book has a picture of this alleged Noreen impersonator standing beside Leonard, and the woman is exactly who Noreen claims, a Nebraska private eye who used to work with Roy Stevens. Yet the woman in question denies ever playing the role of a Noreen imposter and insists the image is faked. There is no definitive proof either way at the moment. If, however, the image is authentic, then it is clear that Leonard did have someone impersonate his wife, which certainly indicates an intent to deceive Noreen. See, this is kind of weird, though, because if this is just a woman who works with Roy Stevens and unbeknownst to her, Leonard just introduced her as his wife and she didn't, whatever, it was an awkward moment and she didn't jump in to clarify, etc. But why would she claim the image is faked? I mean, that's a bridge too far there. And now can Roy Stevens be trusted? But then again, he uncovered so much of this. Why wouldn't he be? I mean, I don't know. A lot of this does not make any sense. The final alleged incident between Noreen and Leonard had to do with the investigation of Charlie Kerr, on whose Iowa farmhouse Johnny was said to be held for a brief period of time following his abduction. Bonacci only knew Kerr by his first name, Charlie, but according to Noreen, he was able to draw a picture which Roy Stevens matched to Kerr with the help of Sioux City authorities. Kerr was described by Noreen as having a lengthy rap sheet for sexual offenses against children. The county attorney in Sioux City then purportedly arranged for a months-long surveillance operation on Kerr. One day in 1993, the county attorney informed Noreen that they were about to arrest Charlie Kerr, and she told her husband, believing she could trust him. Later that day, Noreen got an angry call from the county attorney saying that Leonard had driven up to Kerr's trailer and gone inside to speak with him, which resulted in Kerr fleeing the area before they could arrest him. According to Noreen, for whatever reason, Leonard went to tip off Charlie Kerr about the impending arrest. This incident has not been definitively proven, but Jimmy Gibson corroborated the story, and certain details check out. Noreen described Kerr as having a record of pedophilia and living in a trailer, both of which are proven true by a Sioux City police report. It appears that the arrest of one of the perpetrators in Johnny's abduction was sabotaged by Johnny's own father, which is highly suspicious. Noreen and Leonard divorced very shortly after September 1993. Wow. Okay. I mean, the plot has thickened so much here. I mean, I really don't know what to make of this. Is that not true, though? Like, how can it be verified? I mean, obviously this chart, okay, is there evidence that there was an impending arrest? Is there evidence that Leonard went to tip off Kerr? I mean, there's definitely, the father is just highly suspect given all of these other issues here. I mean, this is just highly suspect. I mean, and how heartbreaking that, again, this is MINDSHOCK. I'm not alleging anything is true or untrue. But if this theory is true, again, I'm not stating it is, but if it is, how heartbreaking is that for Johnny, set up by his own father to get kid? I mean, this is, and again, something's not right, I'm going home. I mean, his statement from the other witness, I mean, that's just creepy on so many levels. That, like, there are these weird people driving around talking to him, and he's just going home. I mean, it's just, yeah, this is one rough case. Following the divorce between him and Noreen, Leonard disappeared from public view, aside from a statement to the Des Moines Register in 1999 denouncing Noreen's claim that Johnny had visited her. And also for Noreen, how does your heart not break for Noreen? She has to go through all this, and also the possibility that your own husband, the father of your missing son, might have been responsible and involved. He then reemerged on 2011 to give his own side of the story, vanished with Beth Holloway in 2011 to the company Rumor behind Who Took Johnny in 2012, and most recently to Sarah DeMeo, who ran the Faded Out podcast in 2018. Leonard insisted that Noreen and Paul Bonacci's versions of events was untrue. However, numerous statements that he made were at odds with the established record and even his own prior statements. Flip-flop on Paul Bonacci. Leonard told Sarah that he knew Paul Bonacci was lying from the very first meeting. He claimed that he asked Bonacci how tall Johnny was, and Bonacci responded that Johnny was 5'2", even though Johnny was a big kid for his age at 5'7". Then, according to Leonard, he spoke to a prison guard who informed him that Bonacci's cell was full of newspapers about the Gosh case, proof that Bonacci was studying the details of the case to insert himself into the story. But then how did he not memorize the height? No corroboration exists for Leonard's account to Fade It Out, and much of it is explicitly contradicted. In Bonacci's diary, he estimated Johnny's height to be 5'5", which is very close to accurate. Furthermore, what Leonard told Sarah about Bonacci immediately exposing himself as a con man contradicts his own statements from 1991 and 1992. Most egregiously, in April 92, he held a press conference at John DeCamp's office endorsing the Franklin cover-up, which lauds Bonacci as a credible witness in the Gosh case, and said, "Paul told my wife and I things we've never told anybody." On Inside Edition, Leonard called law enforcement's refusal to interview Bonacci a major cover-up and pushed back against law enforcement accusations that Bonacci was a pathological liar. It is also weird, though, like, if he was responsible, was he just going along to get along and then he flip-flops later? I mean, there's a lot that doesn't make sense here. Lie about going home immediately upon finding Johnny's wagon. In recounting the morning of September 5th, 82, Leonard said on Faded Out that as soon as he found Johnny's wagon abandoned, he knew something was wrong and quickly headed home to have Noreen call the police. This has been a fairly consistent part of Leonard's story, also being told by him in America's MIA Children, 1992, and Who Took Johnny, 2014. Yet, a September 6th, 1982 news article says that after neighbors called the Goshes at 7:45 a.m. asking where their Sunday papers were, Leonard went out and found the wagon, realized Johnny was missing, but delivered all of Johnny's papers before calling the police at 8:30 a.m. That's super weird. The 8:30 a.m. time is corroborated by the police report, and also indicates that Leonard's account of coming home immediately upon finding the wagon is false unless the neighbors called after 8 a.m., far later than has ever been claimed. Claim that sometimes Johnny went alone on Sunday mornings. Leonard stated during his Faded Out interviews that he did not accompany Johnny on his paper route every Sunday morning, just the vast majority of them. As detailed above, both Noreen, as far back as 1988, before any conceivable motive to make Leonard look bad after the divorce, and Leonard himself contradict that, stating that Leonard always accompanied Johnny except on the day Johnny was abducted. Disavowing the proofs of life for Johnny. When asked about it by Sarah, Leonard responded that he never believed any of the occurrences supposedly indicating Johnny was still alive, sightings, dollar bills, etc., were actually Johnny. Yet in the 80s, Leonard clearly viewed these proof of life as authentic. He was right alongside Noreen at an 85 press conference where they both announced the I Am Alive dollar bill, including the verification of Johnny's handwriting. At the press conference, Leonard called the dollar bill a source of additional hope that Johnny was alive. In the 84 documentary, Kidnapped by a Stranger, when asked about the evidence that Johnny was still alive, Leonard cited phone calls made to Noreen, as well as the Oklahoma sighting, which he explained in great detail. The origin of the Emilio sketch and name. Leonard made two strange claims about the kidnapper more commonly known as Emilio. The widely distributed sketch came not from the Goshes, but from the police. And the name Emilio originated not from Paul Bonacci, but from the Goshes' private investigator, Dennis Whalen. An old Des Moines Register article shows that the Gosh family held a press conference in November 1982 where they unveiled two sketches of the kidnapper they had commissioned, which are the same sketches still in use today. Police insisted that their sketch was similar to the Gosh's, but the police sketch was not released. Why would it not be released? Leonard was also even quoted in the article as criticizing the sketch made to police, claiming that the witnesses considered it very inaccurate. As for the origin of the name Emilio, no evidence exists that anyone used the name prior to Bonacci, and Leonard did not explain how Bonacci would have come across a name used by their private investigator. If Whalen and Bonacci did use the same name, it was almost certainly independently, which only strengthens Bonacci's credibility. Curiously, Bonacci described Emilio as selling children at auctions, and Whalen was known to have attended one such child auction while searching for Johnny. The Sam Soda rehabilitation. Despite Sam Soda having been a person of interest for the Goshes since very early on in the investigation, all that Leonard recounted about Sam on Faded Out was that he did some investigative work on the case and had mafia connections. Well, with a name like that. It cannot be credibly asserted that Leonard was unaware of Sam being a prime suspect in the abduction, because he co-authored an opinion piece with Noreen which called the local man in Des Moines named Sam a longtime suspect who Paul Bonacci had accurately identified. This attempted rehabilitation of Sam Soda's image is part of a larger issue. The multitude of inconsistent statements by Leonard demonstrates a severe lack of credibility on his part. Leonard's motives for repeatedly misrepresenting the facts of the case are unknown. The apparent intention, however, is to rewrite history in a very self-serving manner. All of Leonard's inconsistencies revise the facts of the case in a particular direction, erasing details that might portray him in a suspicious light, i.e. Johnny having never done the route before, him delaying the call to police, attacking claims by Noreen, the proofs of life, Sam Soda's guilt, and attacking evidence of the Franklin connection, Paul Bonacci accurately describing Johnny Emilio origin. As for why denying a link to Franklin might be self-serving for Leonard, that gets to the darkest allegations that have been levied against him. After they both testified at Bonacci's 1999 civil damages hearing, Noreen showed Larry King's photographer, Rusty Nelson, a photo of Leonard to see if he could identify it. The photo itself had no other information attached to it. Nelson responded that he had seen the man before in Larry King's office at the Franklin Credit Union. He also recognized the man as having been at the Max, a gay bar in Omaha that King would frequent to find child prostitutes, where he originally recruited Nelson. Rusty Nelson's identification of Leonard implicated Johnny Gosh's father as a likely participant in the Franklin pedophile network. Wow. I mean, this just gets more and more mind-shocking. I was not prepared for this level of mind shock. Noreen claimed to receive additional confirmation of Leonard's involvement in the Franklin milieu from a West Des Moines coworker of hers. This coworker was a young man who had grown up in Omaha. According to Noreen, he kept looking at her while on the job, and when she went to the stockroom, he followed her inside, asking to speak with her. Noreen's coworker recounted how, as a teenager, he used to go to the Omaha club called The Mark. While at The Mark, Larry King attempted to recruit him for child pornography and prostitution, and Leonard was also seen there multiple times. The club allegedly was well known as a place where pedophiles could pick up young boys and young girls. More claims linking Leonard to Franklin soon came out directly from Omaha child abuse victims. In 2008, a parent Franklin victim, David Schurter, released a walking tour of the old market area in Omaha. One of the locations he pointed out, a favorite hangout in his words, was Star's Restaurant, below Godfather's Pizza, where he had worked as a waiter. Schurter expressed a tentative belief that he had seen Leonard eating at Star's Restaurant. Star's was a gay bar in Omaha, just as the Max was. In a 2009 chat on the Franklin Files website, Paul Bonacci said that when he first met Leonard while in prison, he knew he had seen Leonard before, most likely at Offutt Air Force Base during the early 80s. What? That observation might lend context to Noreen's allegation that Leonard took Johnny to Offutt Air Force Base at the beginning of August 82. What is going on at that Air Force Base? And why was Paul Bonacci there? And can anybody verify that Leonard took Johnny there? LA pedophile ring victim Darren Reimer told his own disturbing story that paralleled the Omaha allegations about Leonard. In '74, at the age of 10, Darren ended up getting drawn into a well-connected pedophile group involving child prostitution and the production of child pornography. He was one of many children forced to act in pornographic films and photo shoots and sexually service men who appeared to be quite wealthy. The network's apparent ringleader was Guy Strait, Strait, a Hollywood resident who jumped bail after his 1973 arrest for selling child pornography with DOM Lyric and did not resurface publicly until 1976. Strait admitted to knowing other pedophile ring operators in the 70s like John Norman. Locations all around Inglewood, California and Santa Monica, California were sites for this abuse, and one location in particular was a nightclub called the Green Horse, allegedly a location where men would go to pick up children for sex. Darren was adamant that Leonard John Gosh was one of the men who he saw at that nightclub. He claimed that upon seeing a photo of Leonard for the first time, he had a flashback to his own experience back in 1974 at the Green Horse. So where was Leonard living in 1974? I mean, where? Though he first experienced this around 2008 when he began studying Franklin, he still experiences these flashbacks when shown a photo of Leonard in 2018. Noreen had allegedly confirmed to Darren that Leonard, whose job involved taking business trips across the country, did in fact visit Los Angeles. This mentions Leonard being at a nightclub where adult pedophiles sought out kids corroborates the claims about his activities in Omaha. Because Darren's experience was in Los Angeles in 1974, his story implies that Leonard was involved in a nationwide pedophile group for a substantial amount of time before Johnny's abduction. Darren also related what he heard from Jimmy Gibson, a Franklin victim who appeared on America's Most Wanted and was active on websites about the Franklin and Gosh case. After Jimmy came forward to America's Most Wanted in '93, he stayed at many residences throughout the Midwest, one of which was Leonard's hobby farm northwest of Des Moines. The overall credibility of Jimmy Gibson is its own controversial issue, but key aspects of his story have checked out, including the existence of Leonard's hobby farm, which Jimmy was the first person to mention. Jimmy painted a highly unfavorable picture of Leonard, claiming that Leonard was violent and even tried to rape him on one occasion. He also corroborated Noreen's account of Leonard sabotaging the county attorney's arrest of Charlie Kerr. According to Jimmy, Kerr had blackmail material on Leonard regarding a criminal enterprise they were both involved in. Kerr had gotten wind that he was about to be arrested and threatened Leonard that he would implicate him too if he got busted. So on the planned day of the arrest, Leonard got in his car and brought Jimmy along with him to drive to Kerr's home. Jimmy said that Leonard initially planned to shoot Kerr out of anger, but he talked Leonard out of it. Leonard Gosh instead just ended up tipping off Kerr about the impending arrest. Although Leonard apparently told Jimmy that the criminal enterprise Kerr was blackmailing him over was illegal gambling, there's a good chance of that being a euphemism for child trafficking. Kerr was clearly implicated as owning a safe house used to store trafficked kids. Furthermore, Leonard was most likely only able to tip off Kerr because Noreen told him of the impending arrest, and she in turn must have heard about it from the county attorney, who would not have informed her unless their investigation was related to the abduction of Johnny, again indicating that Kerr was being investigated for child trafficking. Jimmy's story then indicates that Kerr and Leonard were both acquainted through a pedophile ring, and Kerr was able to blackmail Leonard with evidence of his involvement. Back in 2004, when he was posting under the name CPP Web, Jimmy claimed that, just like Noreen alleged in her book, the Gosh home did receive a phone call in the early morning hours of September 5th, 82, and it came from the Sioux City area. Given how Charlie Kerr is the Gosh's case main link to Sioux City and the alleged association between him and Leonard, if Jimmy was telling the truth about the phone call, Kerr is very likely to have been the caller. And for Kerr, one of the kidnappers, to be calling Leonard just before Johnny's abduction would imply that Kerr was making arrangements with Johnny's father regarding the kidnapping. Noreen has in fact claimed that Bonacci testified in court that the kidnappers had prior arrangements with Johnny's father to ensure that Johnny would be alone that morning. This does not show up in the publicly released court transcripts, but Noreen's delivery has enough authenticity, even asking her interviewer at one point, "Were you surprised when you heard that in court?" to raise the question of whether the transcripts accurately reflect the entirety of the 1999 hearing. The allegation that Kerr had blackmail material on Leonard might also, if Kerr was the one making arrangements with Leonard, explain Noreen's account of Leonard's very odd behavior in 1982 leading up to Johnny's abduction. He allegedly exhibited tremendous stress and even suicidal tendencies, consistent with the possibility that he was being blackmailed to facilitate the kidnapping of his own son. Being a longtime member of a pedophile ring, as numerous victims and witnesses claim, would easily provide such blackmail material. It is noteworthy that the array of witnesses implicating Leonard, Rusty Nelson, Noreen Gosh, Paul Bonacci, Dave Schurter, Jimmy Gibson, Darren Reimer, have their own rivalries and would not be inclined to conspire together in a hoax implicating Johnny's father. The fact that multiple people otherwise opposed to each other have made overlapping allegations about John Gosh Sr. strengthens those allegations. Obviously, however, they have not been proven definitively. Leonard's 1999 challenge to Doreen's account of Johnny visiting might have been unintentionally revealing. He insisted that if Johnny came back to West Des Moines to visit his parents, Johnny would have visited his childhood home, which Leonard was still living in at the time. Yet Leonard did not receive a visit from Johnny. For Johnny to forego visiting his old home but make an effort to track down Noreen at her new address would be bizarre, except for the possibility Leonard did not address. Johnny was specifically avoiding his father. If the visit from Johnny was real, then by Leonard's own logic, Johnny had some reason not to want to see his father. This is consistent with allegations that Leonard was involved in Franklin, something that Johnny could have easily learned by virtue of being in the same pedophile ring. Wow. So, I mean, yeah, this is mind shocking. This is a whole new level of mind shock here. I don't know if the Mind Shock listeners were expecting this level of mind shocking material. The connections here are so damning. I mean, the timeline, if it's all true, of course. If it's not true, then there's more to be explored. I mean, there's more to be explored either way. We're still not even done with this theory. There's actually a few other suspects that have nothing to do with this theory. It's hard to disprove this trafficking angle when you have this many PIs, Ted Gunderson, all of these witnesses with information that wasn't publicly released. It's tough to just completely write it off. I know a lot of coincidence theorists love to just write it off because, I mean, they are too mentally weak. You have to have a certain amount of mental strength to understand that there's this level of darkness and criminality and just straight up scumbag people in this world, and it's just not a safe world. And it's easier, of course, to believe that it's all fake, right? Because then you could just continue living in fairy tale land where it's something this bad and these vast networks couldn't exist. It's more soothing to believe that. I mean, obviously, like, I get it. It's easier to be mentally weak. Unfortunately, criminal scumbags that do these things and human trafficking does still exist. Unfortunately. So if you're out for the truth, you have to examine all these theories. So yeah, this is obviously going to be the beginning of a series. We have so much more to go over. So I'll be continuing this in episode 2. Plenty more evidence to go over. Hope you guys found another edition of Mind Shock interesting and informative. If you want to help support the Mind Shock podcast, help us get more mind-shocking content out there, keep up awareness in missing persons cases, cold cases of all kinds, and wrongful convictions, you could donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell for notification. You could also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Support the channel that way. Get access to exclusive streams and chats. Like and share the podcast, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcast to request. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.